Hi everyone, hello and thank you for tuning in. On behalf of all of us at Books and Books, I welcome you to a virtual event with Elizabeth Gonzalez James and Raquel V. Reyes to discuss Mona at Sea. Before becoming a writer, Elizabeth Gonzalez James was a waitress, a pollster, an Avon lady, and an opera singer. Her short story, Cosmic Blues, was a finalist in Glimmer Train's Short Story Award for New Writers, and her stories and essays have received multiple Pushcart Prize and Best of the Net nominations. She attended the Bread Loaf Writers Conference, the Tin House Writers Workshop, and Lit Camp. She lives with her family in Oakland, California. Our moderator tonight is Raquel V. Reyes. Raquel writes stories with Latina characters. Her Cuban-American heritage, Miami, and the Caribbean feature prominently in her work. Raquel is a co-chair for Sleuthfest. Her short story, A Star Goes Dark, is in the 15th Malice Domestic Anthology. So a little bit about our event tonight. Throughout tonight's broadcast, you're invited to ask questions by using the Ask a Question feature at the bottom of the screen, and of course, copies of Mona at Sea by pressing the green button below. And that leads you to our shop site, so you can also order any of Raquel's books there as well. We appreciate each and every order and the generous donations from viewers everywhere. And now, without further ado, let me bring Elizabeth and Raquel to the virtual stage.
All right.
Hi, guys.
Hi. Welcome, everyone. It's a little different being virtual and not looking out into an audience. So I'm assuming you're all waving back at us. So hi. Oh, look. Oh, in the chat, somebody says hi, everyone. That's good. Use the chat if you want to. It's really nice to know that people are out there and listening, and especially since we don't have, people in the seats like normal in the before times. Use the Ask a Question, as she had mentioned. We will have time for questions afterwards. And the green by the book right there. And when you click it, it opens in another window, so don't think that you're going to lose us. You won't. It opens in a completely different window. But anyway, welcome, Elizabeth. It's so good to have you here.
Thank you.
Welcome to Miami, virtually to Miami. I hope someday that you can be here, and hey, maybe you can come back for Book Fair in November.
Yes.
And because Miami Book Fair is amazing. I mean, international, tons of people. It's great, and they love dark comedies like your book, and especially, I just have so much to say about the book, and I reminded myself, don't give away any spoilers. You'll see it back there. I have all these little Post-its on it going, oh, I love this line and I love that. But anyway, let's get on to, we had spoken a little bit before that you were going to read just a little bit, just to kind of introduce the audience to Mona. So you want to go ahead and do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So for anybody who hasn't read the book, Mona at Sea is a dark comedy set during the Great Recession. And it's about a young woman who loses her first job out of college on Wall Street, and she has to move back in with her parents in Tucson and basically just figure out what she's going to do with the rest of her life. So I'm just going to read a short little bit from the first chapter, and this kind of lays out a little bit of what's going on. This is a journal entry. She started keeping a journal. My mother's parents didn't come to her wedding, couldn't endure the shame of seeing their Irish rose joined to a Mexican-American with skin the color of a pecan shell. Within a year, my parents had me, and a year after, they had Danny. I think my mother hastily made 2 new family members to replace the ones she'd lost. I grew up hearing the story, how love had bested hate. But eventually, I learned the unsaid kernel deep inside the tale, the one that caused me for years to look at mirrors quickly and always at a slant, was that I now carried something inside of me that might cause others, even my own family, to turn away. I remember the year I learned the sun was going to explode. My mother had an astronomy book that lived on the coffee table, and the back inside cover had full-color illustrations of the final stages of the sun, from yellow ball to angry giant to dead, silent dwarf. I imagined all-consuming heat scorching everything on Earth and the forever night that would follow. I had nightmares about fireballs, melting trees, and gloom swallowing every sound. My mother hid the astronomy book in the attic and enrolled me in a few after-school classes at the Y. By second grade, we had a day planner in which I could see my future meted out in 15-minute increments. All those little blocks, equally sized and neatly labeled, made me feel secure, confident I would always know what lay ahead. When you're told over and over what a smart kid you are, and when you win every science fair, every essay contest, it doesn't just go to your head, it defines you. I defined me. I became what people said I was, a winner, a genius, a singular talent. Losing becomes an abstract concept like infinity or world peace. I could think about it, but to see it or live it, that wouldn't compute. My middle name is Lisa after my mother's mother, and Mona was tacked on, I assume, in a half-cocked bid to align me with greatness. I don't know what my parents were playing at, naming me after the most famous painting in the world, but if timeless beauty and silent grace are the summits I'm meant to reach, God knows they picked wrong. I'm a one-hit wonder, then nothing, nothing, like the lady with the mystic smile.
I love that.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's so much good stuff here, like that I want to talk about, but I don't want to spoil it because Mona's journey is so beautiful, and you take us along it so tenderly, and you really let her be who she is. I'm actually going to skip over my first question and go to my second one because that's about that. Mona at times is a little unlikable. I love an unlikable character. Perfect characters have no potential for growth, right? Mm-hmm. And her anger comes from some trauma, which I thought you handled so deftly, beautifully on the page. But it also comes from her perfectionism, which we heard in that journal entry. And I think I heard you say in another interview or something that I heard that you wanted her to be under pressure like carbon becomes a diamond. Can you tell us a little bit more about her anger and, building that character and that delicate balance of, she is unlikable. She's, at times, but you love her and you're rooting for her. I think the reader's rooting for her the whole way, which is beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, she definitely is unlikable at times. And I'm okay with that. I agree with you. I love an unlikable protagonist, especially an unlikable female protagonist, because I feel like for so many years we weren't allowed to have that, right? And exactly. So I am totally fine with an unlikable female character. But I think she's sympathetic, and those are two completely different things. And the creating pressure, like how carbon turns into a diamond. Yeah, in thinking about her character, I started out by knowing one thing about her, which is, and this isn't really a spoiler because it comes out in the first chapter. Mona's a cutter. She engages in self-harm. And that was the very first thing that I knew about her. And so I said, okay, she's a cutter. Why is she cutting? She's cutting because she's angry. Okay, why is she angry? Well, she's angry because she's unemployed. And I moved back from that first thing that I knew, and I tried to build out her character by understanding why the things that were happening to her, and why was she responding that way. And I think that by squeezing down on her, by giving her these problems, that she's engaging in self-harm, she's unemployed, she is completely without direction, there's family drama going on. It just squeezes that character into who they really are, because when you're backed into a
dynamic, I love the sibling dynamic.
Yeah,
that was really. I mean, I don't think it's a spoiler to say she has a brother who's very different than she is, and that's a lovely comparison. And I think he has some really lovely, tender moments because he's a little bit of a bro dude.
Yeah, he's a frat guy.
Yeah. But there's some lovely, tender moments there that we all, as the readers, were taken to get to. It wasn't instantaneous. It was really, really. I appreciated him. He turned into a really lovely part.
Yeah,
I wasn't expecting as a reader.
He was my favorite character to write, actually. I had so much fun taking somebody who, if you just saw him at a party, you in his, Alpha Omega Chi sweatshirt or whatever, you'd be like,
Right.
oh, what a like typical frat dude. But he has so much emotional depth and so much emotional intelligence, and I loved just giving him that gift and then like seeing what he was going to do with it. And Mona got the brains and he got the heart, and I think together they make a really beautiful pair when they're not completely at each other's throats.
As siblings tend to be.
Yeah.
At some point. So let's go to the cutting, because that is a main theme in the book. And you walk a really fine line between glorifying it and shaming it. Did you have a sensitivity reader for that element? How did you maneuver that behavioral health aspect of the story? Because you do handle it with such sensitivity.
Thank you. Yeah, I did not have a sensitivity reader, and but I did a lot of research into it. I knew that that this was something that was going to be a big part of the plot, and I read this wonderful book by Dr. Madeline Levine. She's a psychologist in Marin County, California, and she's done a lot of research into high achieving adolescent populations. And these kids were coming to her practice and they were drinking, they were addicted to sex, they were addicted to drugs, they were cutting, they had all these problems. And she was like, they have every advantage. They're smart, successful kids who are going to Ivy League schools. Why are they so miserable? And she found out that they had been pushed so hard for so long and overscheduled for so long, for such a long time in their lives. They had never had the ability to basically figure out who they were and what they wanted to do. They'd never been self-directed. Everything had been laid out for them, and all they had to do was just show up. And it created a population of kids who the only way they were able to feel anything was to hurt themselves. And so I took that and I read some other books on cutting, and then I used that to build out Mona's character as well. And yeah, I really wanted to be sensitive to the fact that it's a major problem that a lot of people have. Although what Mona does with it is a little off the beaten path. It's not typical to what I think most people do.
Right. And that's a good reminder that, it is fiction. And as writers, we get to, there's poetic license a little bit that, that to make the story. So, so we mentioned that it's a dark comedy, and there are some really hilarious points in it. The coffee date that ends up in the desert, hilarious. There's another one where, and these are teasers because I want everybody to go, oh, what was she talking about? I got to go get that book, because you do have to go get that book. There's the link right there. The humming, the patriotic, was it Star Spangled Banner or something?
Yeah.
Let's just say an intimate moment, hilarious. There's some really beautiful, fun stuff in there. And I know that this book took you about 10 years to write from the the thought of it, the idea of it, until the finished manuscript. Can we talk a little bit about that? And because I'm super curious if Mona was always a dark comedy, or if it was just going to be kind of like journal entries, or like, because that's what happens with stories. They kind of morph and change and so forth. And you've had the benefit of going to some really lovely programs, right? So talk a little bit about that process.
Yeah. So I originally, I told you the very first thing I knew was that Mona was a cutter. And I'm just going to say right off the bat, I have a really messed up, twisted sense of humor. I'm like wrong in the head. And I was like, I had this idea for a title, Mona the Mutilator. And I was like, can I write a graphic novel that's funny about cutting? And I was like, no, because I don't know how to draw and I don't read graphic novels. So Okay, so that went out the window. And then I was like, okay, short story. And then as I started thinking about the story, I was like, no, there's like so much here. It's going to be a novel. But I'd never written a novel. I didn't know anything about writing. I don't have an MFA. And the only class I'd ever taken on writing when I started this was a screenwriting class. And so, yes, it was always going to be a comedy. And her voice was pretty consistent from almost day one. Like, I think that her voice is like, if you imagine the little angel and devil on your shoulder, her voice is like the devil voice in me. I think it's just like every like snarky, cynical thing that I could think of, like she'll say out loud. And also because I had never written anything before, how angry she is in the book is like 1% of how angry she was when I first started writing it. And like, my husband's my first reader, and he was like, you got to bring it so far down. So I just kept bringing it down, and it was here, and readers was like, no, you still got to bring it way down. So yeah, so bringing the snark and making her more likable, more sympathetic, that was a long process. And yeah, it took 10 years. And I finished it in 2015, and I sent it to an agent, and I got an agent, and the agent sent it out to publishers, and it went out to like 45 publishers, and everybody loved it, and nobody picked it up. They were like, it's hilarious, but we don't know how to market it. And so I put it in a drawer, and I started working on the second book. And I would send Mona out every now and again to small presses and contests, not really expecting anything. I sent it in 2019 to Santa Fe Writers Project. They do an annual literary awards, and I thought it would be cool if I got an honorable mention or something. And I actually became a finalist, to my complete shock, and they offered me a publishing contract. And it was actually difficult at that point to get back into it, because I wasn't expecting that. I thought that I had failed to publish this book, and I was okay with that. I had moved on, I had accepted it. And so when they offered the publishing contract, I was like, oh my God, like, is this book any good? Like, do I want to get back into it? And they paired me with an amazing editor. And then she was the final piece that like really brought the book to the state that it's in now. Nicole Catherine Schmidt, she's an incredible editor. And yeah, so that's the condensed version of that story.
Yeah, I love it. Let me see. I don't want to rip my. So since we're talking about the process and so forth, I think readers are always fascinated about what happens, on our side of it, the process, but also let's talk about this fabulous cover. I love it. You. I love the Loteria themes in it. How was that? Did you send them some ideas? Did they come up with it? What was the back and forth about this cover? Because it is a gorgeous cover.
Thank you. Yeah, my publisher showed me some covers, and they weren't quite right. And we went back and forth a little bit, and it wasn't clicking. And so I actually hired my neighbor, Cynthia Warren, who is a graphic designer. She specializes in like hand-drawn calligraphy and things like that. She does all the lettering for Chez Panisse restaurant in Berkeley. It's this really iconic restaurant. So, and
I know what it is. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, I'd never heard of it before I moved to California, but yeah. And she's traveled extensively in Mexico. And I was like, Cynthia, I'm thinking of that. Yes, exactly. I was like, Cynthia, do you know the Loteria cards? And she was like, oh my God, I love them. And she knew exactly what I was talking about. She read the book, and this was the cover that she came up with. And I was just like, that's it. It's exactly what I wanted. The font is based on these like hand printed Mexican signs from the 1930s. You've got the Loteria El Sol, La Serena. And then Mona graduated from University of Arizona. She's in her cap and gown. And this is like the actual color, like Pantone color of Arizona's cap and gown. Like it's the best cover I've ever seen in my unbiased opinion.
Right. So we talked about that, and you just brought it up. So your heritage is similar to Mona's.
Mhm.
Am I correct? You're having some Mexican heritage in your background.
Yeah.
And so there's one line, and I've got marks here somewhere, but I'm sure you've given enough interviews now that you probably have got it on the top of your head. That Mona talks about that she looks like her mother, who is the white half of the partnership, and her brother turned out looking like her father, and how she walked around with a Spanish name, but she didn't reflect that, right? She had a Mexican name, but it didn't reflect it. So, just want to talk just a little bit about that, because I think that is one layer of her character that also fuels a little bit of that perfectionism, because well, why shouldn't she have everything? Because she visually looks like she should, right?
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about it in those terms. I think that for her bi-ethnic identity is a big source of pain. I think that she feels like she doesn't. I feel like she feels that she doesn't really fit in, and it's difficult when, like, your skin and your name tell two different stories. I mean, I also am bi-ethnic, like you said. My dad's from Mexico, my mom is white, and like, it's a tough position to feel like you don't belong in either group. Like, I grew up on the border. I grew up in Laredo, Texas, and like, the kids in my elementary school, like, used to tease me and call me white girl and stuff. But then, like, when we moved to Corpus Christi and I was in school with a lot of white kids, then, like, I was Mexican, and I was like, but I haven't changed. So which is it? Like, it's weird when you're bi-ethnic or biracial. I think, like, other people feel like they get to tell you who you are. And there's a scene. Yeah. Well, there's a scene in the book where she's at this horrible job interview, and this guy tells her, oh, you don't look Spanish. You could pass for white. And, like, he's giving her a compliment. And it's just like that kind of crap. Like I've had people say that to me before, and it's an awful position to be in. And I haven't seen it a lot in literature. And I wanted to write a character like that so I could talk about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no. So my heritage too. My mom is white and my father's Cuban. Looking at me and my name and everything, I ended up, on that side of it and not the other side of it. But spending time in white communities, I was always told what I was. Like, they would just inform me as to what I was. So I completely connected with that part of her, of just, And let's go, that scene with that interview. People, please, you have to buy this book, because there's so many little gems in there. So I had just one little bit that I wanted to, this was back to, what you had mentioned about the cutting. And I really appreciated this part. And did you mind if I read a line from you?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. If I'd been allowed to fail at something when I was a kid, maybe I would have learned how to do it better. I don't need to learn how to swim. I need to learn how to drown. That was just beautiful. You've put it in so simply and concisely into those lines. I love that.
Thank you.
When I guess that's fairly early in the book. And when I got to that, I think that was one of the things that made her likable. When you were able to identify with her like that. And from later on in the book, we should talk about that. I mean, okay. I also think that's one thing that is one of the pressures on her, and it's in the first chapter, so it's not like we're spoiling anything for the readers. She's had a video go viral that is incredibly embarrassing and that she carries around with her. I mean, go ahead. Tell that part of it.
Yeah. She's when she gets to New York to show up for her Wall Street job, oops, the company went bankrupt over the weekend, and she gets there and the doors are locked, and it's clear all the employees have been booted out of their offices, and they're all kind of standing around like holding their possessions in cardboard boxes. And then this reporter comes up and films her and is like, "How do you feel right now?" And she has this total meltdown, and the video goes viral, and she's branded the sad millennial. And yeah, it super sucks.
It does. And I think that happens more often. You know, it happens a lot. And I think that's a difficult thing for anybody to deal with when your private moment really becomes kind of international and shared over and over again.
Yeah. And I really worry about accidentally going viral. It is something that I never want to happen to me. And I graduated college in 2004. So we were basically the last class to get through school before Facebook, before MySpace. Like that stuff was around, but it wasn't as mainstream as it was even like a year or two later. And camera phones were not ubiquitous. YouTube hadn't come out yet. And like some of the embarrassing crap that I did in college, like if that had been filmed, I would have lost my mind. You know, I think that I worry about us losing empathy as a society, basically. And I'm not talking about like moments where somebody's filmed and they're held accountable for something awful they're doing. I'm talking about like where people are filmed where it's just out of meanness, and you can tell like they're just having a bad day, or like something is going on with them. And I just want us as a collective of human beings to just have more empathy, I guess. And that's where I was going with that scene, is that I worry for us, for people.
I agree. I absolutely agree. So if everybody will use the ask a question, we're going to get to, if the audience has any questions, we're going to do that in just a moment. But I have a question for you, because I'm really curious of your stint as an Avon lady. Because I remember as a kid, Avon like had the coolest little things, like there was like a perfume that was like a cat, and I'm sure that the perfume smelled terrible, but it was a cat.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how did that happen?
So my mom's good friend was a district manager for Avon. And when I was young, like 13, 14, you know, I wanted to pick up extra money. And she was like, "Hey, you want to sell Avon? Sell Avon." And I just would literally go door to door and just bug my neighbors. Like, "You want some Skin So Soft? You want some, bubble bath?" And I had a lot of practice, because back in my day, in the olden times in the 90s, if you wanted to go like on a school field trip, you had to go door to door and sell chocolate, sell sausages, like cheese balls. I don't know. So I had been doing that already for years. And so when it was Avon, I was like, "Yeah, Delta Burke's got this new perfume, come check it out."
Yeah. I here in Miami, I went to Catholic school for a little while, and we always had to sell chocolates.
Mm-hmm.
And like, you get your little pack of chocolates.
Was it the world's greatest chocolate? Was it that
World's
brand?
Finest. World's Finest.
World's Finest. Yes, I can taste that. I can, like saying it, I can viscerally taste the chocolate almond. I went to Catholic school also briefly, and we had to sell that too. That stuff is good.
It is. And now they've got more flavors. They've got
nice.
dark chocolate. Yeah. Well, I have to buy it for my bank teller, because
I got to find somebody who's selling that, because like now I want it.
I'm sure somebody will be. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Well, it's summer, so maybe not. You might have to wait till the next time. It looks like we've got a couple of questions. Let me see what we have. Let's see. Okay, well, this one's interesting. Can you give some tips for writing dark comedy? were some books with dark comedy that influenced your writing?
Oh, yeah. So this one's very dark, but I did read it while I was working on this book, and I think it did possibly influence me. American Psycho by Bret Easton Ellis. I will be honest, I skipped over all the murder stuff because I just don't want to read that, but because it's real grisly. But his diatribes about like Whitney Houston and Phil Collins, where he's like comparing them to the great masters of Renaissance art and stuff, they are laugh out loud funny. And his alienation from his Wall Street colleagues, where you can just tell he just despises these people. They're hilarious. That book is hilarious. So I would recommend that. And Charles Portis, he's not as dark, but Dog of the South is a really, really funny book. I don't know why the Coen brothers haven't turned that book into a movie, but if you like the Coen brothers, it's definitely for you. Dog of the South by Charles Portis. Tips for writing dark comedy. I think that comedy works really well for dark material because I think that it allows you to get really close to ugly stuff. And if you're sensitive about it, and I think that's the key, you can really go a lot of places. But you have to be honest about what you're really talking about. You can't like take things lightly. So yeah, it's tricky. It's hard, and I think it's hard to do well. And that's why I'm also struggling to come up with some other good examples. Yeah, if anybody has any other dark comedies that they love, you should definitely put them in the chat.
Yeah, so we've got a question here from Tina. Let's see, why was the first thing you knew about Mona that she was a cutter? I know that you researched cutting, but I wonder what about cutting was attractive to you?
Yeah, I think that when I originally thought of it, it kind of presented itself to me as a challenge. Like, could I write something about cutting that would be funny? And again, this isn't to diminish the pain of what that is, because I really truly understand like what a horrible thing it is to engage in self-harm. But again, like I said, I have a messed up brain. I go to the darkest places when I have a very gallows humor aesthetic. And again, like I said, I think that comedy lets us get really close to difficult topics. It's that comedy tragedy kind of, they're two sides of the same coin. And so, yeah.
It really fits her voice too, doesn't it? I mean, Mona's voice, it really makes sense for her because of how sarcastic she is and how she views the world, and it informs our understanding of her. Mm-hmm. And I think, and I don't want to be putting words in your mouth, but I'm just saying, having read it informs the reader of her pain, you know?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that was the other thing I was going to say is female anger is something that I think we're only just beginning to reckon with as a society. Mona is extraordinarily angry, and for a number of different reasons, which are gradually get revealed throughout the novel. And giving physical expression to that pain is basically just the best she can do. And I think that was also something that was probably motivating me right at the beginning, and I probably didn't even consciously understand it. I wanted to write something about female anger and how that expresses itself.
Now, is that going to be a theme in anything else that you're writing? Are you working on something else?
I am, and female anger is not necessarily a component of it, but the lengths that women will drive themselves to get away from terrible men is definitely part of it.
don't you want to come over to the crime fiction side, because you can really explore that really well. Come on over to my genre. Come on over.
I'm thinking about it. I did have an idea for a cozy mystery.
We'll talk later.
I've got to read some first and just see what the genre conventions are, and I'm going to start with yours.
Oh, fun. Okay, one last question, and then we'll call it for right now. And don't forget, there's the green button right down there that you can click. That'll take you to Books and Books, which is our wonderful Miami bookstore, our independent bookstore that we adore. This one says, okay, what other millennial aspects did you incorporate in the book aside from the fear of going viral? There's a lot of good little tidbits there. I always wish you could have put some memes in there. I think you even referred to a couple of memes.
Yeah. So yes, going viral. Also, Mona feels a lot of pressure from watching her friends' highly curated lives on social media. You know, you see a picture of your friends with the new car they just bought, they just got a sweet new job, and just having that kind of infinite scroll of everybody else's happiness that you're not participating in is definitely like a millennial feature. I mean, we were the first ones who had to go through that. The complete collapse of the economy, just as we were supposed to be out in the world, like building equity and saving and getting good credit and all that stuff. And then also having parents who were so like, the millennials are the ones who had the helicopter parents, and these parents who were like so intimately involved in their children's lives, and actually and stifled them to the point where Mona's like, I need to learn how to drown.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, her mother is a very interesting character, and I think she's a career woman, her mom, and putting a lot of pressure on it, and that whole relationship was really really interesting. Well, I think we'll call it for right now, and we're going to bring back. There you are, Elizabeth. I want to thank you. This was lovely, and it was really an honor to get to read this before it was out on the bookshelves, and I want to encourage everybody else to get it and put it on your bookshelf, because it is so good. And and buy copies for your friends and give it to them too.
Thank you so much. And Books and Books has signed copies. Is that correct? You have with signed book plates.
We have the book plates, so if you order from us, we'll send you a signed copy with a signed book plate. And I also dropped a link in the chat for Raquel's book. It's the one that comes out this coming October, so be sure to pre-order it. Or if you're in Miami, come see us for the real event. Thank you guys again. Thank you so much in the audience for joining us. We appreciate you guys coming to all these virtual events. And again, if you haven't ordered Mona at Sea, you can do so by clicking the green button. And hopefully we'll see you at some of our upcoming virtual events.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Bye, guys. Have a good night.
You too.